And so if you watch enough Guy Maddin films, as I'm sure some of you have over the years, and you get used to the homoeroticism and the heteroeroticism and the voyeurism and the incest and the abject pleasures in sex that he takes, you begin to think this man has no shame. But actually, I think it's more the other way. I think it's that he has all the shame in the world. He has all of our shame, all of your shame, and all of my shame, and that's what makes his films so compelling. He puts all of that on screen, and he's mining a very rich tradition in doing that. A lot of people pay attention, first of all, to the formal techniques of Guy Maddin's films, the history that he's drawing on, German Weimar cinema, early cinema generally, melodrama, those kinds of things. But there's a lot there, and I think what's most interesting as I watch his films is that as he draws on early cinema, and particularly on early black and white melodrama from Europe, what he's really drawing on is this kind of very sincere emotional current that runs through those films that is almost absent in commercial cinema today. You rarely find, after decades and decades of the crust of irony piled on top of, what's been produced in film, you rarely find films that are as directly and sincerely emotional as you do in Guy's work and as you did in those early films. And in some parts of the world you still find that. I think if you go to Southeast Asia, for instance, if you go to South Asia and you look at films there, you'll find some of the same emotional current. That's a supercharged, super excited passion, eroticism, a kind of an almost physical feeling that you get from desire. And I find that very hard to find in contemporary cinema, certainly in contemporary art cinema, and almost never in contemporary commercial cinema. But it's there in Guy's work because he actually strips back a lot of what we've become used to as a kind of a veneer of sophistication. And in Guy's work, what you see is just the real thing, the real electric drive, the kind of human impulse that all of us have, but most of us are deeply ashamed to show to other people. And the great thing about Guy is that he's not ashamed. And maybe it's because he's from Winnipeg. My wife is from Winnipeg as well, and I'm beginning to learn a little bit about the people from that place. They are freaky, and we are grateful to them for that. The last thing I want to say about Guy's work is that, as Canadians, we're often struggling for what Canadian cinema is, trying to define what Canadian cinema means. It's been a sort of ongoing trend in the study and the appreciation of Canadian cinema for decades. And part of that, I think, part of that struggle comes from not knowing where to begin.
I knew I was going to be probably pretty primitive because I was already 29 years old, and I knew all sorts of far younger, more technically proficient photographers, writers, people that had been in theater already for 10 years by that age. And I had none of that experience, but I just sort of knew I wanted to put something together. And I knew my film would come out kind of very primitively no matter what, and I just didn't want to be accused of being a wanker. So I thought I would draw back on, I knew I better start with a short film too, because I had so much respect for the mysterious anatomical workings of the feature. I could never even read a feature-length script in one sitting without taking a rest a couple times, and so I didn't quite know what differentiated a short from a feature other than the running time, but I knew they were two different organisms. I knew they had different DNAs and different reasons for being. But what those were, I hadn't quite palped out for myself yet. But I knew there was a commonsensical reason for just starting with a short. It might get finished, this one. But around the time, I made my first short was just called The Dead Father, and that's kind of what it was about. My father had died when I was 21, and for some reason I think I just didn't want him to be dead, and I didn't allow myself to grieve at the moment of his death, nor at his funeral. I remember faking some tears at his funeral, even though I was sad. I had to push out some crocodile tears to prove that I was a worthy mourning son. But then an odd thing happened. A few years later, I started getting these dreams in which my father made hasty returns to the house. Apparently, these dreams are kind of common. In the dream, my father hadn't died. He was sometimes sick, but he had actually gone to just live with a better family. So it was really wonderful because in these dreams I could remember my father's voice, I could remember the way he moved much better than I could when I was awake. I guess your memory is accessed far differently when you're dreaming. But always after just staying for a few minutes, maybe just to pick up a razor or a glass eye or something, he would leave quickly again, back to this other preferred family. And so I was left with a bad feeling of abandonment again, and that's the feeling that's apparently common, that the survivors of a dead person often have these dreams where they feel abandoned rather than grieving. And so I thought, well, maybe I can just replicate some of these dreams and I'll get at a human feeling. And so I made a movie which basically just was sort of my greatest hits of all these dreams. And I don't think I captured that feeling at all, but I got really hooked on trying to capture these elusive, poetic feeling sensations that dreams left me with. Very confusing little things. I like the idea that dreams were confusing because my inevitable ineptitude as a filmmaker was bound to make my movies confusing, I figured. I certainly wouldn't have mastery over continuity, and dreams aren't famous for continuity. So I thought that maybe I'd best just tap into the dreams, and even if I don't understand them myself, maybe if I make an honest film of them, I could somehow figure out what it was I made years later. Anyway, I think the movie failed, but I sort of chanced upon, by trial and error, a visual style for myself, which has quickly evolved into whatever it is I've got. Cameron listed it as homoerotic, heteroerotic, the checklist. Pants down, stuff like that.
See you all again. I'm Kay Armitage. I'm with the faculty at Cinema Studies Institute. I'm the introducer of the introducer, and I have a few thank yous.
Thanks so much. That feedback was my fault. I turned my microphone on, and Jill's microphone and mine mated noisily there when I thanked her. Sorry about that. It'll be the last of the unseemly noises this evening, I hope. Just a brief explosion of seemly gratitude. The Cinematic Studies Institute and the Jackman Humanities Institute, thank you so much for having me here to this event, an orgy of me. Night after night. I'm so nervous by day. It's really, it's doing wonders for my metabolism. And it's true. I am going to narrate this thing live. It's gotten so I can't watch my own movies anymore unless there's something, sort of a large degree of uncertainty about whether, all the wheels are going to fall off. So I'm not going to say anything more other than I want to thank, of course, Kay Armitage, Elizabeth Legge, and all my other wonderful hosts here, and up in the projection booth, Daniel Neuhaus and Alana Hamilton, projectionists tonight. Filmmakers are always grateful to good projectionists. It always comes down to them. And so, thanks to them. Daniel Neuhaus actually came to Winnipeg and volunteered to work on this movie, and ended up, because we had a mutiny on the set, ended up working in the lighting department, the camera department. He's in the movie, doing all sorts of things, so I'm especially grateful to him. Anyway, he also put this microphone on me and put a black crepe over there. Kay Armitage did the art direction with the flowers and the chair. I'm going to go over here and just start narrating now. Thank you. Pardon me?
Was that a script you were reading?
Yeah, I have I'll tell the truth. I have a karaoke version of the movie. Tempting to break into song, actually. the only thing that makes it challenging is the person that transcribed the narration made so many mistakes. And I haven't looked at it lately, so there's a few stumbles there, but that's okay. But I do get a chance to reword things that I wasn't pleased with the first time. It's very easy to do,